What is going on, Wolfpack Nation? Welcome to another Tuffy Talk Live Show, Halloween edition, y'all. It's time to get spooky as we are going to be doing a little bit of something different here today. We're definitely going to still talk all things NC State for sure. There's once again still so much good to talk about. Obviously, for football, we got a big game this coming week, as we can see in my hashtag right here. Right here, uh where you're playing those Stanford Cardinals, and the battle of the block asses for the first time in program history that these two teams will be facing off against one another in Carter Finley Stadium at noon. They're here this Saturday, which weather right now is looking pretty solid, but again, we need it to stay that way. And as we always know in North Carolina, things are always subject to change when it comes to the weather. So anyway, you got myself, Lade Smith, here with Carson Correll. Going to be talking all things NC State here today. Carson, man, what up, man? You ready? You ready to talk some things NC State, bud?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, always here for it. Greg, what up, crew? Appreciate you tuning in with us, Greg. If not mistaken, unfortunately, will not be joined by Greg like today, as he spent the weekend down in Tampa, Florida, cheering on his Tampa team. So I know he went to the Tampa Bay Lightning game on Saturday, and then went to see the Tampa Bay Bucks game on Sunday. I don't know if Tampa Bay Lightning won, but obviously we know what happens to the Bucks. So, Greg, maybe you're not as much of a good luck charm as maybe you think you are for the Buccaneers. But either way, y'all, again, let's make sure, just as a reminder once again, that any comments, questions, concerns they have, make sure to pop them in the chat, and we will get to all of them here today. But starting off, Carson, let's talk a little bit about men's soccer. Why don't we? Because I think they've earned the respect now to be mentioned as one of the first sports, not just like the afterthought, way after football, right? Being the number 19 team in the country. Okay, see Greg letting us know 3-0 Lightning. So hey, at least you got one out too, Greg. Good for you. But anyway, being the number 19 team in the country, now beating Louisville at home in the final home game of the season, 1-0. And right now, you're staring top 15 right in the face, right, heading into the final two games of the season, and then you got ACC tournament coming up here. So I think there was one NC State fan that said it best, but I don't think the highest expectations that any NC State fan had for this season for men's soccer even is in the realm of what actually has transpired over these last few months for men's soccer.
Yeah. So I was writing the game last night for the technician. So I got to email or interview Coach Hubbard and one of our players, Henrique Santos, after the game last night. And I asked him a few questions about pretty much the growth of the season, how the team's evolved throughout the season, and the culture that they're instilling in the program. And Coach Hubbard pretty much put it best. He loves the fan support. Loves winning and tying. That gives them a lot of confidence. Not necessarily tying, but if you tie against a really good team, like the Hofstra tie, Hofstra was ranked, and you went to Stanford and tied on the road when Stanford was ranked number 2. So that was a big win, or not. Big spiritual win, I would say, for them. It's so weird talking about ties in soccer in comparison to other sports, but
right.
One thing I did know is that we have not lost a game in over a month.
Wow.
Our last loss was the Duke game, which we really should have tied. That was on September 27th. It's now October 28th.
That's crazy.
Ever since that Duke game, we've not lost a game. We've been 3-0-3. So 3 wins and 3 ties.
Wow. That's phenomenal. And Greg even bring up potential home NCAA tournament game in play. Yeah, which I don't even remember the last time that's happened for men's soccer. It has to have been at least since probably the mid 2000s. Probably that's the last time that's happened. So, it's definitely exciting to see where this program is going and what Coach Hubbard can build off it for sure. So he's going to use this momentum during the offseason from a recruiting perspective. But again, this season is far from done, and let's see what we do in the ACC, and then let's see if we can make a run in the NCAA tournament. I mean, last year Coach Hubbard at New Hampshire took his team to Sweet 16, and why not? Why can't he do it again at NC State this year? I mean, it seems to be well within the cards. So excited to see what can happen with it. Any final thoughts here about men's soccer, Carson, before I move on?
Yeah, I think coming off of, 2 straight losses to Duke and Carolina going into Stanford, because that was the first game where they really got into that run. After talking with Coach Hubbard and Henrique last night, I think the Stanford game, like going on the road to number 2 Stanford and tying them, really gave them a confidence boost and pretty much showing them they can compete with anyone.
I love
And
it.
then you have the SMU game where they just went full blazing on the scoring, because that was a big struggle that they were dealing with before that game, was school playing good defense but not being able to score the ball really well.
Yeah.
And then so I think the Stanford and the SMU game were big confidence boosts for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Never thought of it that way, but that's awesome. Yeah. So again, just love what Coach Hubbard's doing. Love that. Again, I mean, Boo Corrigan. I mean, as much crap as NC State fans give Boo Corrigan about 2021 College World Series, or the bowl game in San Diego, whatever. Like Day, he's absolutely crushed it with these hires so far with Coach Hubbard. But then next one I want to mention is Coach Lindsay Leftwich. Like, I'm telling you all this right now because I think Coach Leftwich put out a tweet that we have another big commitment coming in here soon, and can't share the name yet. As again, we'll wait to let the recruit announce herself, but this will probably be more likely the last recruit that we get as a part of this class 2026 class. But I'm telling y'all right now, like, this recruiting class is probably easily a top 5 recruiting class in the country, if not even higher. This recruit will solidify multiple top 20 recruits in the class of 2026 committed to NC State, and also to even more on top of it, other top 100 recruits as well. You have obviously Maddie Smith, who we have our interview with, the number 5 overall recruit in the country, one of the top catcher prospects in class 2026. We got a commitment this weekend, number 20 overall recruit in the country, and Michaela Watson, who's one of the top outfielder prospects in the country, and got another big commitment coming up here soon that I'm assuming probably will announce within the next 24, 48 hours. And it's going to just solidify that there's no doubt that this team is not looking to compete in the ACC. This team isn't looking to win ACC championships. This team's looking to go to Oklahoma City. I mean, period, point blank. Like, this team's trying to go win national championships. Like that's the ceiling that Coach Leftwich is looking for with this team and with this recruiting class. Like, that's what screams out at you. You know what I mean? And because with what Coach Leftwich was able to do with last year's team, having a few big wins, beating Clemson on the road, beating South Carolina, who was a ranked opponent, and being competitive in the ACC, who's grown consistently more and more tough every single year. It just goes to show that once she gets that added level of talent combined with what she's able to develop, like, sky's the limit for this team. I'm telling you this right now, that and I've said it before, the next 3 to 4 years, NC State softball will be in Oklahoma City. Just go ahead and book it. I'm calling my shot. So, got to give Coach Leftwich and this coaching staff their much deserved credit, as they've absolutely crushed it this offseason so far.
Yeah. I mean, we saw a lot last season where Coach Leftwich pretty much just went to the team and was like, hey, we're addressing the culture of this team. We're addressing a winning culture. And you saw that on the field with all the players cheering each other on, dancing after getting runs. I mean, Coach Leftwich has really brought a family environment to the team. And I think she's very much like a player's coach. She knows that she was an assistant at, was it LSU?
LSU.
Okay.
Yep, longtime assistant. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, longtime assistant at LSU, which was a winning program. And so she knows the steps that it takes, not only to develop players, but also reach the promised land. And players are taking notice of that. And they're looking at NC State and saying, hey, this has a lot of potential to be a top 10 or top program in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, I mean, even Maddie Smith herself, again, the number 5 overall recruit in the country, you know, when she, you know, when I kind of asked her the question of, well, what is like kind of on your wish list of things that you wish could improve with the NC State facilities to get to elite level? Nothing really came to mind for her. Now, I mean, the biggest thing which I answered basically for her was need a better scoreboard, need a nice scoreboard, an improved scoreboard for sure, first and foremost. Um, but then, you know, even talking with Coach Leftwich as well, even, you know, better hitting facility and pitching facilities, you know, more cages, more areas for development, you know, skill work, things like that as well. But again, I think that those things are to come. I know that that's within the plans is to improve the softball facilities over the next year or two once they get the Doak Field uh, upgrades completed. So anyway, Hunter, don't worry. We don't get ahead of us here, Hunter. I promise you that the punt to Geo is coming. Don't worry about that. But Carson, what's your thoughts here, man? Go ahead.
Thoughts about
Well, just like just you know, in terms of NC State facilities, kind of with softball, like you know, is there besides maybe the scoreboard, you know, is there some that's kind of screens out to SU as kind of a hope for upgrades here?
nothing really comes to mind directly, but then again, I'm not a player, I'm not a coach.
Yeah,
I'm
true.
just a fan. And
True.
so I don't know all the factors that go into full facilities for softball. Um, I will say, if with regards to actual like being on the facility, there's not a lot of space on campus right now to
True.
do construction on that. I mean, it's literally
Okay.
right next to the soccer field, and soccer shares the track with the track and cross country. So
Yep.
I think it's going to be difficult to make a big expansion, but I think little expansions and just small improvements can make a big difference.
100% agree. Yep. So now let's move on here to NC State volleyball. That again, it's kind of an interesting thing to talk about. Is you know right now they're 11-7 overall, 6-4 in the conference, but they're also 6-1 at home as well. You know, volleyball once again is kind of that you have to know the history of NC State softball to, I'm sorry, NC State volleyball to really understand the steps that have been taken this season. Again, this is a volleyball program that really has no history attached to it whatsoever, besides just really existing, and that's no slight. That's just, I mean, it's just the fact of what it's been. It's a young volleyball program that just hasn't really seen success. And you know, for NC State this season, I mean, being over 500 in the ACC that has teams now like Stanford, like Pitt, you know, like Carolina, you know, who's, you know, one of the top teams in the country. I mean, this year, still beating UNC, but even now, taking care of business, sweeping Notre Dame on the road 3-0, and then sweeping Clemson 3-0 at Clemson as well. I mean, just 2 solid wins in ACC that you'd like to see. Now, obviously, playing number 4 Louisville at Louisville and playing Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech and not winning a single set against either of those teams is not what you want to see. But you know, listen, it's just all kind of just you got to remember where we currently are as a program and where and how kind of measuring, kind of keeping that measuring stick fair, if that makes sense. So, you know, love what we're seeing from Coach Slabe and this team, and that it seems that we're building something here. Now, I'm not necessarily sure how high we're going, but I don't know, Carson. What's your kind of thoughts here on this volleyball program? You probably cover it a little bit more than me, but just it's like I see that we're building, but I'm sitting here like, yeah, I mean, we did get swept both by Louisville and Georgia Tech, and it's not really what you want to see when you're trying to kind of solidify that this is a program that's growing. You know what I mean?
Louisville and Georgia Tech are 2 of the top programs in the ACC, as well as Pitt, SMU, and
Stanford.
Stanford.
Yep.
So I'm not really shocked that we lost those games. And going into that sort of stretch where we were playing 4 straight road games, I said to myself, you know what? I will be satisfied if we come out of that with 1 win. And
We
what did
did.
we do? We not only won 2 games, we swept them.
Yeah.
Right. So not only are we beating the teams that we should beat, we are obliterating them.
True. It's a good point. Very good point. Yeah. So again, just excited to see how the rest of the season turns out. So now we face Syracuse and Boston College at home before going to Miami, and then we get to see SMU and Pitt down the road as well as we can. The season goes all the way to the end of November, so we got plenty more matches here to come. But a lot of opportunities still on the table to try and solidify some top tier wins. And then obviously got to talk a little bit of basketball here as men's and women's basketball both had prime time with the Pack this past Friday. The biggest thing that came out of it, and Carson, I don't know if you know more about this, is again, unfortunately, I was working at the fair, so I wasn't able to attend prime time with the Pack. But I heard reports that Isaiah James was in a boot. Did you hear or see anything about that?
I did not. I was not at prime time at the Pack either. I was
Okay.
working YMCA camp in the mountains this weekend. But
good for you.
Yeah, if that's the case, that's not good.
No. Yeah, no, 100%. It just I heard definitely some talks. Yep, no, Isaiah James she was on crutches. Sorry, she wasn't in a boot. She was on crutches at prime time with the Pack. There's a picture here, and so and apparently reports are that she will be okay, but probably I guess is preventative more than anything. But yeah, definitely, especially with the game against South Carolina looming over the next couple weeks, definitely need every player healthy that we can get. Now, the one thing which I wanted to bring up though, and I actually saw this in our Discord chat, was the the odds came out for Vegas for winning the national championship. And right now, NC State sits at plus 3,000 to win the national championship. Teams that are ahead of us are Notre Dame at plus 900, South Carolina at plus 150, even LSU at plus 1,600. And again, like I feel like that what was it last week that women's basketball Twitter page that said our ceiling is an Elite Eight, and then now this where Vegas is basically saying that we are a pretty big long shot to win the national championship. I'm sitting here like, am I hyping up this season and this team more than they actually are going to be? Like I don't know, just like that. Like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like for example, like with Vegas, NC State softball this year, where Vegas had the win total plus or over under 8.5, and a lot of people were screaming like, "Are you crazy? Like you're saying that like Vegas basically saying that we're going to have just as good of a record, if not probably a little bit worse than last year's team? Like, no shot. Like plus over 8.5 all day long and twice on Tuesday." And I'm sitting here like now seeing two different things that are kind of screaming out to me like, well, okay, maybe Vegas is trying to tell me something here. I mean, are you kind of buying into that much, Carson, or are you still on the hype train just like with me that, hey, Final Four, ACC championship or bust?
I never buy into basketball championship odds until March.
True. That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, do you agree that I mean, what do you truly feel like the ceiling is for the in-state women's basketball team in 2024, 2025?
The ceiling for this team is a national championship, no doubt about it.
I'm glad you agree with me on that.
You have a Final Four team coming back with 3 returning starters, and the only people who aren't returning, you got Mimi Collins, she's gone, and River Baldwin, she's gone. Very good players, very influential to the run, but you also have a lot of depth on the team. You got some good players in the transfer portal, and you have some good freshmen as well. So definitely a lot of depth that can help this team reach the same ceiling, if not better than the last year.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, so I'm glad I'm not smoking something because I was a little worried that I was missing something here. But anyway, though, so one other things as well is since this is a Halloween edition, I want to jump on over to our rankings and have some fun there. But last thing I want to give a shout out to is another thing that's scary, which is Wolfpack Wrestling, baby. And obviously the wrestle offs happened here on Saturday at Reynolds Coliseum, which wrestle offs is basically kind of like this, like a football spring game where it's basically like enter uh, you know, match between each other, between wrestlers and state wrestlers. And the biggest thing, honestly, that came out of it, and again, we're definitely gonna be talking a lot more NC State wrestling where we come here. But Preacher Man 613 beats us to it, saying that Ryan Jack and Jackson Arrington, who are last year were top 10 wrestlers in the country, are going to be redshirting this year, along with as well what seems like to be, I don't know what's going on with Owen Trefon, but who last year was a top 20 wrestler in the country at the heavyweight. But Isaac Trumbull, I mean, is going to be our starter at the heavyweight, who last year won a world championship. And I don't know what Owen Trefon's situation is on if he has a red shirt to use, but the biggest thing, which probably the biggest question that people are having right now is, well, why would you redshirt 2 or 3 top 10 wrestlers in the country in their respective weight classes? And a lot of it kind of comes down to probably future thinking, thinking about next year, thinking about the development of those wrestlers, where basically with wrestling, not only do you have a red shirt year you can use, but you can also use an Olympic red shirt as well, which is what Isaac Trumbull used last year, where he basically used an Olympic red shirt to focus on developing to go compete for a world championship. So that wasn't a red shirt; that was an Olympic red shirt, which is different. That wrestling programs have that not a typical college sports program might have. And so I don't know what the plan is in terms of if Ryan Jack, Jackson Arrington, Owen Trefon are going to be Olympic redshirting or just simply redshirting. And the benefit of that is not only just from a development standpoint, that it just allows the wrestlers not to go through the grueling schedule of a college wrestling season, but also it basically allows them to just focus on personal development as a wrestler. And then also too, so the other benefit is that it gives guys opportunities to get some action this year, so that way next year those guys who wrestle this year can combine with Ryan Jack, Jackson Arrington, Owen Trefon next year, and basically continue to build, have a top elite team every single year. So it's kind of a weird math where it's like it's a benefit for the wrestler, but it's also a benefit for the team. That, listen, I mean, if Pop Polizio and the staff have enough uh, faith and excitement of the potential that some of these wrestlers have at that Ryan Jack, Jackson Arrington, Owen Trefon weight class, then let's go ahead and redshirt those guys, let them develop, but then also to let us, get those wrestlers some action. So that way next year we can, either knock that wrestler down or knock Ryan Jack down or up or whatever that may be, fit those pieces in where they need to. So that way we can see all those guys plus those guys together to build an elite team next year. So again, it's kind of a weird, it's kind of a weird problem that's very unique for wrestling, for college wrestling, that no other team really has to go through that. I mean, where the idea of even thinking about, like, I mean, imagine like Elliot Avent during like Carlos Rodon's sophomore year saying, we're going to redshirt you and allow you, even though you're fully healthy, to develop, and that way we can bring you back next year, to go for a college World Series. Like, that doesn't happen. The only time you ever really redshirt somebody is if they're injured. You know what I mean? So it's a unique and weird problem, but again, it's a benefit for the wrestler and it's a benefit for the team, that if you have that depth, then why not use that potential option to your benefit? So, because Carson, do you follow much NC State wrestling much at all?
I'm getting into it.
Oh, a little lag here. Could be from my side. Sorry, bud. But you were saying, so do you follow? So you follow in-state wrestling?
Ever since I became a student, I started following it a lot more.
Sweet. Yeah. Have you been to a match?
I went to like 3 my freshman year and then 2 last year.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we need to get you some more this year. It's gonna be a good one. So excited to see it. But anyway, though, so let's jump on over, man. Any other final comments on any other things? All things NC State. Carson, before we jump on over to our scariest NC State moments in history rankings.
Yeah, I think with wrestling, like you were talking about with the red shirting, something that no other sport deals with is having one player represent one position.
Right.
Like in football, you have a quarterback, you have a starting quarterback, but you also have a backup quarterback that you can play at any time you want.
Right.
Basketball, you have a point you have a point starting point guard, but you also have a backup point guard in case first point guard needs to take a break. Wrestling is not like that because you have one representative for each weight class for each position. And
Yep.
so that can add to a lot of depth to the team.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and it can influence a lot of decision making by the coaches.
Yeah. True. Preacher Man even pointed out the Stanford match because the Stanford match is going to be very interesting. As obviously Stanford is a, you know, top wrestling program in college wrestling, but also too, it's going to be interesting is our former NC State wrestler and one of the all-time NC State wrestling greats, and Hayden Heideley is actually an assistant coach at Stanford this year. So it's going to be interesting having Hayden come back to Reynolds Coliseum, but on the opposite side of the mat than where he competed for 5 years. So that's going to be really weird. It's going to be kind of like 2 years ago when Nick Wisdowski, the two-time national champion, he was an assistant coach for Cornell when Cornell came to NC State to compete in a duel 2 years ago, and that was really weird to see Gwiz, probably arguably, if not the greatest. Actually, no, I wouldn't even say arguably the greatest NC State wrestler in the program's history, competing against NC State. That was weird, especially in Reynolds Coliseum. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would be like if Philip Rivers started coaching at Auburn and Auburn came to Raleigh.
Yeah, really weird stuff. So, but anyway, though, let's jump on over to some rankings, y'all. So, gonna bring our tier list here. So, what we're gonna be doing with this? So, I kind of did some digging back, kind of came up with my own list of some of the scariest moments that I have in NC State history, but also too looking at basically where this was, uh, I guess, inspired. And Carson, you probably know this, but the technician came out with a tweet where it was asking fans to comment their scariest moments in NC State sports history, and we were like, hey, like let's kind of use this to our own benefit. Let's have a fun conversation here. So make sure in the chat, Preacher Man, Hunter, Greg, anybody else who's tuning in here, if you have any other moments that we have not discussed, make sure to put them in the chat and we will get to them. But let's not go any further, as the first one on this list here, and even the one that Hunter mentioned, the Puntagio, which is this first one right here. So basically, the different tiers that we have for those listening is the lowest tier, which is like dust off the shoulder, which was like, yeah, it sucked, but whatever. On to the next. Hurt for a bit, meaning like in the moment it stung, but as time has passed, it hasn't really been something that we've really kind of talked about much since. Never forget the day, which was like basically like we still talk about it for sure. It's definitely a moment that will never be forgotten. And then downright cruel, which is like NC State crap. Like this is the definition for it. It's kind of deal. Like this is like we dread it. We hate even talking about it. Like Carson. Like I get shivers just even thinking about these moments. Like that's what this tier is. So Preacher Man talking about the TA McClendon. Don't worry, that one's on this list here as well. But Carson, where would you put the Puntagio on this list here? And I don't think that word this is anywhere of the dust off the shoulder or a hurt for a bit moment. Am I correct?
So this was the first like full season where I was actually watching NC State football and like getting into watching the ACC in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this was Mike Glennon's last season, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that okay, so it was. Yeah, I mean, going into the game, pretty much my parents told all my life were like, "Hey, Carolina's the bad guys. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they're our rival. We got to beat them." And then going into the game as well, they were like, "Hey, we've been Carolina like the last 4 or 5 times, so they're gonna want to get us." And so I'm like, "Okay, let's watch. Let's just watch the game and see what happens." And then watching the game, I was absolutely stunned at the end of it.
Yeah. Yep. Nope. It was the worst. I mean, I was actually there in person, and yeah, I still never forget where I was in the stadium, upper level, on the home side, up in one of the corners. I was actually in the corner where the end zone was that Gio ran it to, and so let's be real. I mean, the guy is literally the thumbnail for it. So I mean, I feel like that's. I mean, that moment doesn't belong anywhere else, and downright cruel, right? I mean, just don't even talk about it, don't even mention it, like burn the football, like burn the jerseys, like whatever it takes to get that behind us. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and if you look at the replay, there's an actual crowd in Chapel Hill because this game takes place in October before
True.
basketball season starts, and so
Mm,
that may be a contribution, but
agreed. Yep. Now, Preacher Man brings up the baseball College World Series. So talking about more likely about the 2021, uh, you know, getting pulled from the 2021 College World Series. Here's my thing with that moment. And so like for any ones that are in the chat, like we'll just kind of talk about it instead of kind of having it as a picture. But here's my thing. I think that for me kind of belongs in the hurt for a bit. Just because, yes, do I think that there's not a shadow of a doubt we would have been the favorite to win the national championship that year? Absolutely. But you still would have had to gone and gone to a super regional format, a best of 3 series versus a very, very hot Mississippi State team. Um, and at the end of the day, like, it was such a phenomenal year already that, like, everything at that point was just like just, sprinkles on top. Like, it was just like just even better than whatever we had imagined for that season, especially after losing 1-0 to Duke, which we'll also talk about as a moment here, on this list. But that's kind of where it kind of goes for me. It belongs to me as kind of a Hereford bit, but also too because like the Pac-13 game, like it was just such an amazing game, and the guys played and so hard. So it does suck for sure that those guys weren't rewarded for that effort and getting pulled for such a bullcrap amount of reasons. But I just can't like the Gio Bernard like moment. There's nothing good about that like whatsoever. Like there's nothing good at all. But the College World Series 21, there was so much good. I mean, the win at Arkansas, like huge, amazing moments. The College World Series, we were playing great ball, but we still had a little bit of a ways to go to see if we truly could hit that national championship. But what are your thoughts on that moment, the 2021 College World Series here on this list, Carson? If I were
I
to put it
think
on here.
I think the worst part about it was that the players were notified that they were getting sent home at like 1 in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that was definitely the worst part about it. Like I wake up that morning and I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Like I could not believe my eyes when I saw that on
Yep.
ESPN.
Fully
Uh,
agree.
I mean, I'm gonna put hurt for a bit as well because at the point in time, if this were in 2021, I would say downright cruel. But
Yeah.
now looking back, I'm just incredibly proud of the team's effort
Agreed.
that they gave.
Agreed. So now moving on to the 2021 NC State versus Boston College football game. Now, just to kind of lay the context here again a little bit, is NC State uh, in I'm sorry, am I saying the right year? Yeah, 2021. Yep, 2021.
22.
22 was it? Was it 2022? Are we sure? I
Was
think it's
this the
2021.
was this the MJ Morris game?
No, 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 no. This was the Zay Flowers game.
Okay.
The Zay Flowers game where we were playing for an undefeated home season. We were playing for what would have been a 10-win season. Yeah, because this was the San Diego year. Yeah, and you losing on senior day at home with Isaiah Moore, Drake Thomas, and those guys, like, and Zay Flowers, who now plays for Baltimore Ravens, went off just to, heartbreaking, just like how the heck did we lose that game? And especially too, like how it ended. Because remember too, this was the one where they called the pass interference on Drake Thomas on the 4th down play for Boston College. They called a pass interference on Drake Thomas, and they gave him 1st and goal for Boston College late in the game. So for me, I'm putting that moment in hurt for a bit. Just because I feel like that, never forget the day is kind of like, like, will it always be remembered? I don't know if it'll always be remembered. It definitely sucks a lot for sure. Like, we're definitely gonna think back on the moment that, like, if we would have won that game, we would have been in a really great position to go to have a 10-win season during the regular season. And then also to going back to back. So you're right. Maybe it was 2022 then. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
2022.
I
It was
just looked it up
2022.
to confirm it was 22.
2022, because in 2021 we went undefeated at home. This would have been 2 years in a row. We would have gone undefeated in Carter Finley Stadium if we would have won that game. So yeah, so definitely, just a can't even describe that loss. But again, I just don't think like 20 years from now we're going to be talking about this game still. So what are your thoughts on that game?
This was the last game of my freshman year. And so
Mhm.
I was in the student section for this game. And I mean, in the game, it did not feel good at all. But we started it very well. We went up 14-0 in the first quarter.
Yep.
And then Grant Gibson gets injured, our starting center. And so they got to put in a new center with a freshman quarterback to read the defense. You see where I'm getting at this for a bit.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people criticize Doran for being a little too conservative, but I don't think this was entirely his fault.
Yeah.
I don't think this was his conservative nature that cost us the game. You had a freshman quarterback playing with a new center. That's not a good combination for any team, no matter the coach.
Yep.
And
Agreed.
so I think, considering the context of the game, I would put it in either hurt for a bit or dust off the shoulder.
Yeah.
If this were a different context, I would consider it a little more unexcusable. But I mean, you have to consider the context.
For sure.
Obviously, blowing a 13-point lead to a 2-win team at home is not very good. But there are worse losses that can happen given
For
context.
sure. Agreed. And especially too, I mean, and arguably one of the greatest players in Boston College history, in Zay Flowers, as well. So, they did have a stud that just unfortunately we had to, face him, and he was just on that game. So, but let's talk about a moment that I think is definitely going to easily belong higher, which was the 47-24 loss to Virginia Tech in 2019 in men's basketball. Carson, I'll let you comment on this game first. Where do you feel like this game belongs?
Never forget that day.
I agree. I do agree with you. I don't like downright cruel. Like, it's just embarrassing, like incredibly embarrassing from like a national perspective, but it's not like there was no implications from a rivalry or a championship or something like that perspective. That just like, what a missed opportunity. Like there wasn't anything like that like this was a missed opportunity, besides the fact that we were ranked at the time,
And
top 25
they were ranked as well.
That's right.
And
So
coming
that's
into
really
the game, we had the game right before this was the Kyle Gav Virginia game where they beat us in overtime by like 1 point.
Mm.
And then the game right before that was the Clemson game where Braxton made that 3 to win it. And so a lot of us were just riding into that game, hopeful, with a lot of hype. And then we just could not score the ball at all. And Virginia Tech, it's not like Virginia Tech played good defense.
No.
Both teams just played bad offense. Like,
Yep.
It was literally Virginia Tech scores. Okay, NC State misses. Virginia Tech gets a turnover. NC State scores. Virginia Tech turnover. NC State miss. Virginia Tech turnover. NC State miss. Virginia Tech miss. It was a game like that. It was just not fun to watch as a basketball fan in general.
Yeah, agreed. So I would completely agree with that. And so yeah, I mean, just embarrassing from a national perspective. Only scoring 24 daggone points in a basketball game. Like, it was like I still remember being up in the 300s watching that game and just being like, am I really watching? Like, am I really seeing this? Like literally, we didn't even score enough points to cover the projected team total, like for one of the teams. Like that's how bad it was. We like literally, if you combine the two scores, like it still wouldn't have covered the over under for both team totals for that game, which I guarantee you were in the mid 70s, so we weren't even there, which is crazy to even think about. But anyway, next one I want to mention is the 2013. I'm sorry, was it 2013? I think it was 2012. I think NC State versus UNC, the 18 inning game for in the ACC semifinals. The game versus UNC, they went 18 innings. We were literally in the bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, full count, and the ball goes way outside, a huge curveball, and our guy swings at it and strikes out. And literally, if he would have just held the bat on his shoulder, we would have won that game in the 9 innings. But instead, we go a whole nother 9 innings and lose an 18 inning, just late, one of the longest games in the ACC baseball tournament history, and unfortunately lose to UNC, who goes on to face, I believe it was Virginia Tech in the championship game and win pretty handily. But I think it was pretty much understood that the winner of that NC State versus UNC semifinals game would have been the team to go win it all. And obviously, in the context now of the fact that now 6 different times Elliott Avon's been to the championship game for ACC and has gone 0 for 6. Like, this is definitely one of those where, like, this was probably one of the closest we have been, where we played well, but we had every opportunity to win that game, but just couldn't get it done. It just sucks, especially again to your rival as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a little too young to remember this game a little bit, but you did a great job explaining the context of the game, and I'm gonna put it in. I would put it in never forget that day, because we still haven't won an ACC championship under Avon, and I think this just contributed to that bad luck.
Yeah, and it was 2013. I was right, 2013. So yeah, I would say never forget the day as well. Again, just with the historical context of being one of the longest games in ACC championship history, combined with it being against UNC, being in Durham, like it was a packed house. I still remember staying up to like 1, 2 a.m. in the morning watching this game. So yeah, never forget the day. Now let's move on to a game that needs no introduction whatsoever. In 2016, NC State versus Clemson. Downright cruel.
Downright cruel, absolutely.
Agreed. People are never going to forget this game and don't even want to talk about it. Burn the film, like which sucks though, because literally we played so well in this game. Like, we played great on both sides of the ball. Defense played, sitting on their head. Offensively, we were productive. We were getting up and down the field. We were getting a lot of terrible missed calls our way. No shocker there. The referees were 100% in the Clemson's back pocket that game. And yeah, we totally should have won this game. Like, there's no reason we should have lost this game. But unfortunately, once we missed that kick, it was like, why do we even play overtime, right?
Yeah. I actually remember where I was during this game. I did not watch it. It was my 13th birthday. It was like sort of like a wait birthday weekend where my dad and I were in DC.
Yep.
And we were touring the Capitol building at the time, and we had it on ESPN Gamecast on his phone. And we saw, oh man, we're driving. We're in field goal range. We can kick field goal and win. And then my dad's phone starts getting a lot of texts. And we're just like, I don't think he made the kick.
Oh man, yeah, and this was also my senior year as a football equipment manager. So I was on the sidelines for this game, and it just, I can't even, like, it just was absolutely disgusting. Just gut wrenching. Just like the locker room was like, just to. Like, again, I can't even describe it. It was not fun. It was not a good moment. So, especially for me, I would say, being a football equipment manager, this being my senior year, it was even more downright cruel than even probably to some or most NC State fans as well. So, any final comment on that, Carson? Go ahead.
Yeah, and the defense played amazing in
Great.
that game.
Phenomenal.
Like, Clemson had Deshaun Watson at the time.
Yep.
They got to the 1 yard line twice, didn't score. They had a turnover on downs, and they had the fumble. And you have to think about the context of this game as well. If we win this game, Clemson's not in the ACC championship. They don't go to the college football playoff, and they don't win the national championship. There's no Dabo's dynasty if we make that field goal.
Ooh, no Dabo dynasty. That's bold words there, Carson. I like it.
Yeah. Well, in order to be a dynasty, you have to have 2 championships.
Oh, that's true.
Dabo would only have 1 championship.
That's true. That's true. Good deal. Now move on to the full court shot that NC State fans will remember forever, and Chandler Parsons from Florida hitting a Hail Mary of a shot right at the buzzer to beat NC State in at the time, I believe it was RBC Center at the time, 62 to 61, began back in 2010. And for me, I put this as hurt for a bit. Like, I know it's still 14 years later, and I mean, we still talk about it. But again, it's just like, it was a big game, being that it was Florida, who at the time was definitely more of a dynasty and elite basketball program than they are now. But again, just like same thing, like we've said before, like what was the real implications of this game? And probably just another solid resume win for the NCAA tournament, but was against ACC, was against a rival. That's where I kind of put it. Like, yeah, it sucks and it's crazy, but it's like, crap happens, man. Like, that's just one of those things where it's just like, crap happens. Like how, like he wouldn't have made that 99 times out of, he wouldn't have made that 2 times out of 100 if you had asked him to do it, like it wouldn't have happened. So I don't know, just it sucks, and it's hilarious to talk about even still to this day, but whatever, it is what it is, kind of deal. So any would you disagree with that, Carson, or agree with that?
I would agree 100%. I mean, 2010 area, Florida was very good. They won championships in I think 06 and 07.
Correct.
So playing a good program like that, I mean, it sucks obviously, in the way that it ended, but still you got to appreciate the team for going out and giving their best and fighting hard. Because if you lose on a play like that, you can't be mad at the team for giving their best.
True. Very true. Cool. So now moving on to NC State versus Maryland 2010. I was there at this game, and it was one of the coldest games I've ever been to in my life. And, just to kind of, again, give a little context, that NC State with Russell Wilson, Nate Irving, and co., you win this game, you get a berth in the ACC championship game, and you go up 14-0 in the first quarter, and then Torrey Smith goes freaking bonkers and absolutely destroys you the rest of this game. And we lose this game 38-31 again in Maryland. And for me, honestly, I think it's never forget the day. But man, like, that team was so stacked and so good. And I mean, you already beat Florida State that year, so you feel pretty darn confident, facing Florida State or whoever you had to. I think it was maybe Virginia Tech. We would have got a second shot at Virginia Tech in the ACC championship game. So, but I don't know. Like, what are your kind of thoughts on it? I'm between never forget the day and downright cruel. What do you think?
So this was the first season where I got into NC State football, just like watching the games. 2012 to 13 area was like where I actually started to get into like the ACC. But I was like probably 7 years old at the time, so I didn't know anything about the ACC or the NCAA or whatever. And so pretty much going into the game, my dad was just like, hey, if we win this game against Maryland, we're going to the ACC championship. And I thought that meant like the Super Bowl, the championship. And so I remember watching the game with my grandparents actually. And my uncle, well, let's just say he's very glad that Maryland is not in the ACC anymore. But
I love it.
Yeah, I have brief memories of watching the game with them, and I remember having this one image in my mind, just being like, "Man, are we about to go to the championship game?" And then it just all crumbles.
Yep, absolutely crumbled. So never forget the day or downright cruel. What's your vote?
I'm gonna go with never forget the day.
All right, cool. We're in agreement there. I like it.
That 2010 team had so much potential to be good. If you look back at their record, The Virginia Tech game, they had that game won.
They did. Yeah.
The ECU game, they had that game won.
Yep.
The Clemson game, they were up the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had a very realistic shot at going 12-0 that season.
Yep. No, still to this day, I still say one of the most underrated and underachieving teams in NC State football history. That team is loaded. That team is stacked. I mean, you're starting 3 linebackers with freaking Nate Irving, Audie Cole, and Terrell Manning. I mean, like there's a reason like that they're in the conversation between them and Peyton Wilson, Isaiah Moore, and Drake Thomas is which threesome is the greatest linebacking core to ever play at NC State. So but we'll see. Now moving on to another one I think is going to be up there, which is the 2015 regional finals versus TCU, where we were up 8-1 heading into the bottom of the 8th. We were up 8-1 heading into the bottom of the 8th, and literally TCU scores 8 runs in the bottom of the 8th to come back and beat NC State 9-8, which still to this day is considered one of the greatest comebacks in college baseball history. And just the wheels absolutely came off. It was disgusting. I still remember watching it in my parents' living room and like talking about the super regional and and then we lose in just absolute disgusting fashion. So my kind of thing on it is, obviously with NC State baseball, especially recently, we've had a lot of success. So, I mean, it's not downright cruel, but I think it's never forget the day just because of the historical context. I mean, like that. I mean, kind of for the same reasons I have the NC State Virginia Tech basketball game is never forget the day. It's like it was a historic, like, disgustingness that NC State pulled off that day for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, you made history, but not in a right way.
Correct. Exactly. So, now this next one though, I think is going to be a little bit interesting, as it's the T.A. McClendon fumble versus UNC that goes without any introduction whatsoever. I know Carson, you and I were, especially for me, I was barely following NC State sports at the time. I was still just so young, but I mean, it's still something that's debated to this day that T.A. McClendon was in. T.A. was in, and so I don't know. Like, I think it's a little bit of downright cruel, but I also, I don't know. I'm still kind of split. Justin, Preacher Man, I know you're probably still in the chat. Let us know what you think. But Carson, kind of help me out here. What's your vote on this play? Where does it belong?
I'll go never forget the day.
Okay. Any reason why you don't quite put it in the downright cruel section?
Not necessarily. I mean, the Gio Bernard game was different because you had a 10-point lead in that game. You had Mike Glennon as the quarterback.
True.
And
one of the greatest state quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah. Yep. So that's why I think that loss hurts a little bit more. This game was like, what, 04, 06, somewhere around there?
Yeah, 04.
Okay. Yeah, I was like 1 year old at the time. This was right after Phillip Rivers left. And so bit of a rebuild year, I guess, for us. So this team, I think, didn't have as many expectations as 2012. And so that's why I would put the 2012 game as worse.
Yeah. And actually, it was 2003. So it was actually worse because it was Phillip Rivers last year. So even worse. So, but anyway, moving on to our next one here, which is the 2017 game at Wake Forest. The legendary, for all the wrong reasons, Emeka Emezi fumble at the goal line. And for me, this is kind of also another interesting one where I'm kind of in between hurt for a bit and never forget the day, where kind of the same thing with the 2021 Boston College game, where if we would have won this game, we would have solidified a 10-win season during the regular. We would have been able to solidify a 10-win season that year, and arguably what I call also one of the most underachieving, underrated teams in NC State football history. With Bradley Chubb, Ryan Finley, Kelvin Harmon, Naeem Hines, Jalen Samuels, Cole Cook, the list goes on. And, obviously just, I think, but here's also my other thing as well, is I still wonder to this day is if Emeka Mezi did not fumble this ball, would Emeka still have been as great as he ended up being? Because I truly do believe in my heart that this game really kind of pushed Emeka to a new level, of like I'm gonna make sure that this game, like that this moment, like fires me up for the rest of my career at NC State. And I think it was a huge building and maturing opportunity for them. So what's your thoughts on this?
Well, Emeka definitely redeemed himself in later
No kidding.
years.
Amen. Amen to that. So
Before I get more in depth, is the Clemson game from this year also on this list? Are we doing that?
no, just because I feel like
Okay.
we gotta give the games like that a little bit of time before we really kind of understand if it's gonna hurt for a bit or never forget the day. You know what I mean?
Well,
But
I would say that game, the 38-31 loss to Clemson actually hurts a little more because if you win that game in Carter Finley, you're going to the ACC championship game
oh yeah, 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 true.
against Miami, and if you look it up,
Oh,
that
okay, I see
game
what you're saying.
that game was not close.
Yeah,
So basically, if we beat Wake but don't beat Clemson, nothing really happens other than we get 10 wins. And so if I were to reverse one game from that season, I would definitely say the Clemson game.
yeah, I'd agree.
But yeah,
Yeah,
it still hurts to this day. But
yep,
Emeka was a young player. He definitely redeemed himself in later years, though.
completely agree. All right, so now moving on to one that honestly I'm gonna put in a category that hasn't been touched yet, and that is the 1992 Peach Bowl versus ECU. And I feel like that for the people at the time, for some people at the time, that this has been mentioned. But here's my thing: ECU was ranked number 12. We were ranked, I believe, number 22, and so definitely a tough loss for sure. But I also kind of dusted off as well as like it's funny because I feel like this is like when NC State, I'm sorry, when ECU football like talks about like their achievements of the past. This is one of the games they always point to as like one of their like highlight achievements in the history of their football program. So I think honestly the fact that ECU puts it at such a high like stage for them, like at such a high level for them, kind of makes me look at it more as like a all right, cool. It was your Super Bowl. Like it was your trophy. Like congratulations, But I don't know. Like just because again, when you look at the rankings, I mean, we weren't probably expected to win this game, but I understand that yeah, it was ECU, all that jazz. But I don't know. Just for me, I'm like, okay, like good for you. Like so for me, I'm gonna kind of put it as honestly dust off the shoulder, which might be like just maybe just because of my age. I'm only 30 years old and not, I wasn't even born yet at the time, but that's where I kind of put it. So, what are your thoughts on this, Carson?
I would put it the same thing. This is pretty much when ECU football peaked. So
True. Agreed.
I,
So,
I think
yeah.
a worse loss for people my age would be the loss in 2016
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
where we
I
missed the
100% agree. Yeah.
where we missed the 2 field goals.
Yes.
Because
Nope. I agree.
that ECU team was like 3-9.
Yeah, that team was well. Yeah, Scotty Montgomery. Well, yeah, because 3 years of Scotty Montgomery, all 3 years went 3-9. So, yeah, no, I would agree that that 2016 loss for sure hurts it more for me than 1992 Peach Bowl. I 100% agree with you on that. So, but I would still kind of say that even that 2016 game, I would say it hurt for a bit. But you could make a case as dust off the shoulder, being that they were so bad and all that. It's just like all right, whatever. Like, yeah, we should have lost that game for sure, and especially heard, that Scotty Montgomery, went around and did the crossbones, and all that to the crowd and hyped it up. But I don't know. Just I do agree with you though that yeah, the 2016 loss to ECU, in my opinion, would hurts a little bit more than 1992 Peach Bowl. So, all right, moving on to 2021 ACC championship baseball game versus Duke, 1-0 loss and arguably against an NC State team that arguably had one of the best batting lineups in NC State baseball history. I mean, from top to bottom, just absolutely crushed the ball all over the field that entire season, postseason, you name it, and could not score one freaking run versus Duke in the AC championship game. Just absolutely flopped that game. Like Carson, like if I had told you going into that game that Duke scores one run against us, I guarantee you that you and myself and everybody else, every other NC State fan would have sold our house, would have sold the car, and put all that money on the NC State money line. Like, there's no way that we lost that game, but we did. We lost 1-0. So for me, I'm gonna say hurt for a bit, just because I think that the UNC game had much more historical context, and being that I was against UNC, those two things put it a little bit higher. But I also too say as well, like, I don't know, like, I'm in between hurt for a bit and never forget the day. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily losing to Duke that's bad. It's just the way that you lost.
Mhm.
Not scoring a single run. And it's not like you're playing against. It's not like we were playing against a good pitching team either. We weren't
Right.
playing against an Ole Miss. We weren't playing against a Vanderbilt. We weren't playing against in Florida.
Yep.
So I would go with her for a bit as well. But I mean, considering everything else that the 21 team did, I mean, I'll take a loss to Duke in the ACC championship game for a run to the College World Series.
I'd agree with that. I 100% agree with that. So, all right, now moving on to another football game, which was the 2018 NC State versus Wake Forest game, where we lost 27-23. And just one of the most disgusting games, losing to the Wake Forest's third string quarterback at the time, who ended up being pretty solid, and Jamie Newman, who started for Wake Forest. But yeah, this game was just a huge head scratchers. I mean, overall, we didn't necessarily play that bad, except for defensively. We just couldn't stop Jamie Newman. I mean, again, 22 of 33 for 297 yards and 3 passing touchdowns. So just he had a great game against us, but we only turned the ball over one time. So we took care of the ball for the most part. We had 421 yards of total offense, but Wake Forest had 435 yards of total offense. So yeah, just it was kind of the coming out party for Jamie Newman that day. So for me, I'm kind of putting this game as hurt for a bit, as this is also another game with another opportunity where it could have really taken that season to a different level. But I think that, yeah, that 5-10 years from now, like, we won't really talk about it much anymore. What are your thoughts on it?
I would actually put it worse. I think that personally, I think this is Coach Doran's worst loss.
Really? Wow.
This is worse than blowing a 13-point lead to Boston College. This is
Wow.
worse than the Wake game this year. You know why?
Why is that?
Because we had Ryan Finley in this game. We had so much experience in this game, and there was no glaring weakness. Boston College, we had glaring weaknesses in that game that contributed to us losing. The Wake game from this year, we had some weaknesses.
True.
This game, I did not see any weakness going into the game or during the game until the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point for sure, and especially too. I mean, the all black uniforms, like, it was just set up, man, for us to get that win. But yeah, I would agree with you for sure. So I'm gonna bump it up to never forget the day for yeah, that 2017 NC State versus Wake Forest game. Now this next one, we got 3 more left here. Is Man, what game was this? What year was this? I think it was 2002 versus Georgia Tech. Yeah, it was 2002 because it was Philip Rivers' junior year. 2002 Georgia Tech, the Calvin Johnson catch game that is synonymous, is one of the greatest, catches in college football history, and rightfully so. But the reason why this game for me, I'm putting as never forget the day, is because we were I believe either 6 or 7-0 heading into this game.
9-0.
And 9-0. Thank you. 9-0 heading into this game. 9-0, and Georgia Tech coming to your house, and we were a top 10 team and lost to freaking Georgia Tech. Like we totally should have won that game, and then from there just went on this 3-game losing spiral. But yeah, for me, I'm putting this as never forget the day, being that even 20 years later, we're still talking about that game. Just what a missed opportunity with Philip, because I was by far Philip Rivers' greatest team, and that should have been a 12-win team that year. So and competing for ACC championship, and this game completely derailed all those plans.
Yeah, I think if you win just one of those 3 games during that stretch, then you're ACC champions.
Yep.
If you look at the standings.
Agreed. Very good point. So, and I mean, and being that NCAA football has not won ACC championship in well over 40 years, you look at this as, was this probably arguably one of the, I mean, right there with 2010 as, a moment where it should have happened. Like, it should have happened. So, yeah, agree there. Now, these next 2 are ones that I think I kind of have an idea already of where I'm putting them, but 2003, NC State goes to Ohio State, goes to Columbus, Ohio, and loses to the number 3 team in the country, Ohio State Buckeyes, 44-38 in triple overtime. For me, I would say kind of a little bit of hurt for a bit. I mean, just like imagine what that win would have done for Chuck Amato, beating Ohio State on the road, the number 3 team in the country. And being that was also to Philip Rivers' senior year, like you add that to his already impressive resume, beating a team like that with that, just standard in one of the toughest places to play in all of college football, even at the time, like, man, that would have been a game changer for Chuck Amato and his legacy, in my opinion. But so I still think hurt for a bit. It's just like, just what a missed opportunity, like a swing and a miss, being that it was Philip Rivers' senior year. But I think that there was enough to it that it definitely stings, that it belongs in the hurt for a bit tier. So, but what do you think, Carson?
Personally, I would actually put it in dust off the shoulder.
Okay.
Looking at the context of the game, we were down 24-7 at one point.
Yeah.
We were able to come back and tie it and force it to overtime.
Sure.
And we were 1 yard short of scoring in triple overtime. So I think you just have to give credit to the team for the effort that they put in during that late stretch in the game. And so
Yeah.
I think there's more to be proud of from that game rather than there is to be disappointed from. And Ohio State was defending national champions.
Well, and see again, even more hurt for a bit. That, like, again, that's just another legacy addition that could have been. You would have had a win over the defending national champions, and also too, as well, is that the week before we had lost to Wake Forest, so this could have been, really kind of a springboard off that low point to, just kind of moving that season into a whole new trajectory instead of going 8-5 that season. I mean, like, come on, you're a senior-led Philip Rivers football team, and you go 8-5. Like, but if you had beaten, again, the number 3 team in the country in Columbus, Ohio, could you have had another 10-win season that year? I mean, I think it's definitely possible. I mean, you would have been 9-4 if you just switched that one loss from a loss to a win. So you've been 9-4, and do you get one more win somewhere else to get a back-to-back 10-win season? And is Chuck Amato, for another 5 or 6 years after he eventually gets fired, still going to be the head coach heading into the 2010s? Maybe. So, but again, I do agree with you as well that, definitely a lot of positivity that should come out of it. But I also say as well, listen, I mean, again, just like I said, it was a senior-led Philip Rivers team. Like, that was a good team. It needed to be a good team as well. But yeah, I agree with you as well. Now, last one, which I'll let you comment on here first, Carson. 2007 ACC championship versus UNC in basketball. Sidney Lowe's first year. And at the time, he was only the 6th coach in college basketball history, I believe, to go to his conference championship game in his first season. And he faces Roy Williams and sophomore Tyler Hansborough led, with also Ty Lawson UNC Tar Heels and loses right at the very end. I think we were only down by 3 with 25 seconds left in that game, and we lose. But for me, I'm kind of looking at that game being like, obviously at the time we were in a championship drought, and obviously looking 17 years later, we went through a championship drought. But also too that you win that game, Sidney Lowe for sure gets another few years after what he already, beyond what he already did spend at NC State. Like simple as that. Like there's no way you would have fired him after a couple of seasons, no matter how bad they are. If he would have won an ACC championship at the time against the number one seed in the ACC and the UNC Tar Heels with Tyler Hansbrough, Ty Lawson, and Roy Williams, right?
Yeah, and this was definitely when UNC basketball was just at its absolute peak under Roy Williams, because this was 07. They won championships in 05 and 09. So this was right smack dab in the middle of two championships. And this season we beat Carolina in PNC. I think it was one of our first wins against them in PNC. It was definitely Roy's first loss to us.
Yep. So, yeah. But so where are you putting this? Where are you putting this on here? Dust off shoulder, hurt for a bit, never forget the day, or downright cruel?
I would say hurt for a bit, because
agreed.
It took us a long time to redeem ourselves for that.
Yeah.
17 years.
Yeah, 100%. So anyway, but yeah, I think this was a good list. I think it's a lot of thought and kind of, I think you kind of see with each of the tiers kind of what is kind of the distinguishing factor versus all of them. But I mean, are you surprised at all, Carson, that the two moments here at the top of the list on downright cruel are the Geo punt and then the 2016 Clemson kick?
Yeah, because I think they were the most shocking.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it'll be 20 years from now, and UNC fans will still hang their hat on the Geo punt, and we'll still be thinking about what could have been in 2016 if we have made that kick versus Clemson, and how much it would have changed not only just NC State, not just ACC, but college football. Like if we would have been Clemson on the road that year. So, but anyway, y'all. So again, Wolfpack Nation, really appreciate everybody tuning in here. Let me get this off screen, get this back to us. But again, really appreciate everybody tuning in here. Make sure to go and support our amazing sponsors in Cooney Gold. Click that link down in the description below, and make sure to go use our code Tuffy Talk to get 15% off your entire order, y'all. They have some amazing barbecue sauces and rubs. Make sure to go and check those out. Take advantage of that coupon code here today before it's too late. And again, if that order is over $99, that shipping is also free. And make sure also to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And if you really enjoyed this conversation, do us a big favor as well. Hit that like button, and make sure to give us a follow. Tuffy Talk Now, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. But Carson, before we wrap this thing up, man, any final thoughts here, man?
Yeah, I mean, we got a big football game against Stanford. This week. We've been battling another Block S team for the past decade or so with Syracuse, but now we get a battle of the Red Block S's.
The battle of the Red Block S's. That's right. So anyway, y'all, we'll see y'all at Carter Finley Stadium at noon on Saturday, and let's pack the place out, and let's see what happens here in the back half of the season. So looking forward to it. We'll see y'all then. As always, go Pack, y'all. Beat Syracuse.